Hambletonian Stake at DuQuoin, Illinois is to harness racing what the Kentucky Derby is to thoroughbred racing, what the Super Bowl is to professional football, the most important event of each and every year.
Number 3 with post position 9 is Green Speed, owned by Beverly Lloyd.
3-year-old trotting colts compete in the Hambletonian. They're the very best produced in the world. Expensive trotters, well-bred trotters, trotters handled by the greatest of trainers and drivers, trotters who learn the racing ropes at the finest of training centers. But the Hambletonian is a very democratic race, and on occasions, very rare occasions to be sure, a horse without bloodlines of blue, a horse who springs from modest diggings, emerges to earn a berth in the world's most famous trotting race. And this is the story of one of those horses.
5, Jodevin.
Was Jodevin, and he was, certainly in the beginning, as common as, well, maybe a corner gas station. And the colt's price tag was hardly more than what you'd pay for a good color television set, or maybe a 10-year-old Volkswagen. It was owned, trained, and mostly driven by an Iowa farmer named Kermit Hinshaw.
Well, the way we happened to come by this colt was a group of us went together and bought a broodmare named Arden's Girl. And we ended up breeding her to Adios Vic, and while we were taking her back to Adios Vic, we took the sale in. I understand that he'd been through the Yonkers sale for $5,700, and the lady that purchased him had been advised that doubtful he'd stay sound, so she disposed of him here at the Liberty Bell sale. And I was looking for a good trotting yearling that I could afford, and Diane was a favorite of mine, and this colt came into the ring, and I thought maybe I'd go to $2,000 or a little better on him, and I got him for $900.
Jodevin began his training here in Richland, a conservative, peaceful, nothing much ever happens town of 546 in the southeastern corner of the Hawkeye State.
How many people ask you, Kermit, where in the world is Richland?
Yeah. Well, about everybody that didn't know.
Pretty hard to beat these small towns. I'd like to put a little plug in. I still think we're the heartline and the backbone of this whole United States lives in communities, just as ours, and groups of fellows just like us that are interested in doing things on a local basis or national basis. We'll give them a competition if we have the material.
Actually, Jodevin started his training at the Hinshaw family's farm outside of Richland, on a dusty, bumpy track that cuts an egg-shaped half-mile swath through the family's cornfield. Tugging a colt along behind a pickup truck is not the recommended training routine for a Hambletonian candidate, but then at that stage, Kermit Hinshaw feared that he owned a candidate for lameness, not the Hambletonian. Jodevin's conformation, the way he was built, was faulty. His owner wondered whether he would stay sound through the rigors of training and racing. Hinshaw, in fact, had actually bought the colt for resale later. Jodevin remained sound, seemed to thrive on his unorthodox work behind the truck. When he managed to keep pace with the vehicle at ever-increasing speeds, his owner was not only dazzled, but decided to scuttle a plan to sell him. Jodevin continued to be a bright and speedy pupil. And soon he was strutting his stuff, winning handsomely at the Iowa fairs. finishing off his contemporaries on the Iowa Fair circuit and defeating the best freshman trotters in the nation in rich stakes events are two different things. Yet, on sweltering, sun-drenched afternoons at such prominent Grand Circuit racing stops as Indianapolis, Indiana, and Springfield and DuQuoin, Illinois, the country bumpkin proved that he could not only race with royalty, but make off with their crowns as well. Once at DuQuoin, Harness Racing Hall of Famer Joe O'Brien guided his reins. And O'Brien, who had handled a long parade of world champions over the years, came away a believer. Soon it was over. That freshman season of Jodevin's, he had raced 20 times and come home a winner in all but one of his contests. He had not only beaten the best in Iowa, but the best in the nation as well. And he was the first 2-year-old trotter to break the 2-minute barrier in 5 years. Unbelievably, the graduate of the cornfields was voted 2-year-old trotter of the year by the nation's harness riders. The off-season was a time of rest for Jodevin. For the Hinshaws, it was a time for reflection.
It was a little different feeling, you know, but driving a horse in a horse race is about the same.
A time for planning and for worry, since the potential for lameness still ticked away in the colt's lanky frame like a time bomb.
Well, I suppose when you get out there, the excitement sort of leaves you and you're concentrating more on the race than anything else.
But it was a time for family fun, too. Visions of starting Jodevin in the 1977 Hambletonian, the Hinshaws made a momentous decision. They decided to turn their young champion over to this man, Joe O'Brien, a member of Harness Racing's Hall of Fame, a master at preparing a young horse for the big race, a driver of consummate skill, a man who had driven Jodevin in one of his 2-year-old races and had come away impressed. It was O'Brien in the cart as Jodevin legged up for the 1977 campaign. First at O'Brien's headquarters in California, then at Sauda Downs in Ohio. At first, everything went smoothly. Oh, Jodevin was hindered by a lingering virus, but he was sound, which was the important thing. But then at Sauda Downs, disaster suddenly struck. Jodevin, the wonder horse from the plains of Iowa, heading for a berth in Harness Racing's most famous race, suddenly went lame, dead lame. He had suffered an injury to the suspensory ligament in his left front leg, one of racing's most serious, most dreaded ailments. The veterinarian said it would be months before he could race, if he were to ever race again. And the Hambletonian was only weeks away, not likely to wait for Jodevin's recovery. The Hinshaws, shaken, disconsolate, apparently robbed of the chance to start their Cinderella horse in the famed race, took him home. In the hours and the early days following the incident, gloom was the order of the day for the Hinshaws. But Midwestern folks are hardy, resilient. The medical men had said the young trotter was through for the season, but they had underestimated the quality of Jodevin's heart, had overlooked the devotion, determination, and faith of the Hinshaws. The family went to work on the colt's leg. About the time that harness racing folks across the land were counting Jodevin out of the big race, Kermit Hinshaw was testing the colt's soundness on the Richland track. The long hours of family doctoring had worked. Jodevin passed the test. Instead of frittering away the shank of the summer in some Iowa pasture, was back to the races for the amazing youngster. He was rusty, certainly, but he raced well at Springfield, better at Indianapolis, When post positions were drawn for the $284,000 Hamiltonian stake, against all odds, Jodevin's name was among the entries. Shop, the butcher shop, the bakery shop. The streets of Richland, Iowa must have been empty that day, for the faithful were all gathered at DuQuoin. They had come to witness a small miracle. A Cinderella trotter, born of pedestrian parents, bought for a song, trained in a cornfield by a farmer, bouncing back from an injury that would have sidelined most horses.
And Trotting, driving out fast on the inside is Jodevin after the lead. It's Jodevin, native starlight on the outside as they swing around the turn. Down along the inside, that's Noble Darby racing at the rail. Noble Darby and Jodevin battling for the early lead. Moving up third as they head around the turn. It's Jodevin.
If this were a fairy tale, we would tell you that the Cinderella horse won the Hamiltonian on that parched afternoon at DuQuoin. But it is not a fable, and Jodevin did not win the famed race. That honor went to a magnificent trotter named Greenspeed. The Hinshaws and their beloved horse had to be content with a brief moment in the sun, with only a fleeting visit to center stage. And that moment has long since passed, already forgotten by many. But Jodevin is a stallion now, fathering future trotting generations. And who's to say, if he passes on that burning speed and mighty heart, that one day soon, a son or daughter might not represent him in victory lane.